Hello designers. In this video I show you a technique called roughing in. It's a technique for perspective construction in digital sketching. So in this project we apply the 2324 Hyundai brand language to a compact router. First step in this technique is to find an underlay image that matches the perspective of the product you want to construct. So in this, you're looking for something that has the detail and the orientation that you want to show. So if there's any major features or design opportunities that you want to highlight in the product, make sure those are visible. And you want a perspective that is pretty clear. It lets you see multiple faces of the product. So in this compact router, I'm showing kind of an equal weight front and side view, and a little bit of the top view where there's some kind of venting and interface and branding opportunities on the top of the product. So we bring in that perspective image. You can use a photograph, and we're dropping the opacity on that image. So we're only seeing it at about 10 or 20%. And we erase the parts of the image that we don't need, because that could be confusing as we're doing our sketching. So in this part of the technique, we're using either the pencil or ballpoint pen tool. You could even use an airbrush at a really low size to give you a soft and kind of fuzzy line. And this is important because it gives us some room for error, and the gradation between thick and thin line as you put the pressure down on the tablet, it's not as dramatic as when you use kind of a finer pencil. So the fuzzy line actually helps here because we can use the eraser to go in and shape the line. So we use our perspective photograph image to get the general architecture of the product that we're working on, and then we can hide it when we don't need it. So that is on a separate layer. You can see layer 19 in the layer editor on the right side of the viewport. That contains our photograph, and we're sketching on a layer above it. You can see that labeled as layer 18. So here we're carving out locations and general size and orientation of some major features. You can see the rocker switch for the power, and then above it a dial that controls the speed. And I'm not necessarily sketching from memory here. I've done an exercise where I've done orthographic sketches just on with pen and paper. So I have some design cues that are derived from the mood board that was up on the screen that began the video. So you look for motifs or language cues from your source imagery, translate that to orthographic to give you some ideas, and then in this exercise we're combining some of those ideas in appropriate or successful combinations and laying it over this architecture or this scaffolding. You don't necessarily need to be too exact in this stage. I'm using the ellipse guides here just to make sure that my ellipses are horizontal. The major axis is aligned to the horizon line. A lot of our linear elements, we don't necessarily need the ruler here. You kind of want to be, again, fuzzy a little bit in this. Some of those mistakes can be opportunities for new design ideas or transitions from one element to the other. The hardest part in this exercise is making sure that your perspective is correct. So you can go back and turn on that underlay image as much as you feel like you need to keep the big picture looking appropriate. You want all of these lines and all of these elements to share that same perspective system. So when you see something that isn't tracking with that, you can use the eraser. I typically use the hard eraser in this stage to give you a finer line. You can put more ink on the page and then use the eraser to take it off. So you see I'm going back to that underlay to reference the collet feature. You want to rotate the page as necessary, so holding spacebar and finding that rotation feature will help you align maybe your shoulder or your wrist to get a longer line. If there's something that requires curvature, sometimes it's easier to rotate the canvas and then put it back in its proper orientation, frequently just to check the perspective. So this is a type of sketch that might be shared with other design collaborators or an audience outside of the design team. So it might be appropriate to take this and do a cleaner pass over that with some finer line work or some darker line work to try to pull out major features and make the sketch a little bit more exciting. But generally speaking, this stage is more for the design team, where we can see and evaluate certain features without too much time investment in the overall design execution. So we might block in certain features where we put in kind of a grayscale or a darker area where we think there might be an overmold or a material break. I like to use a single accent color. This might be something that's referenced by the automotive brand, or other imagery, other inspiration. And keeping one accent color allows the composition to be consistent. You can pick up on that element in different locations and suggest either lighting or an accent material, or even just a decal or color overlay. Blocking out some of the larger volumes helps with the graphic composition of the sketch. So if you think about figure and ground or breaking up the visual mass, sometimes adding that overlay in that gray can really help allow the product to represent the visual. That's about it for this technique. I hope you've enjoyed the video and you'll stay tuned for more updates.